Welcome to a story that blurs the line between reality and nightmare. Ater's Place. Imagine stumbling upon an old board game at a charity shop, thinking it's just a harmless relic, only to find it holds dark secrets capable of changing your life forever. As you watch, you'll uncover a tale where every move draws the players deeper into an eerie mystery, forcing them to face their deepest fears. If you love stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button to stay with us as we explore more chilling tales, and as a thank you, we promise to keep bringing you content that will make you question what truly lies beneath the surface. It all began with an unexpected find at a charity shop on Market Street. My younger sister, Maya, squealed with excitement as she presented the rigid cardboard box to me. It was far too firm for its apparent age, marked with a black serif font that spelled out Peter's Place. The cover image depicted a small plastic figure, painted a dull purple, striding slowly forward, seemingly oblivious to the several white plastic figures, chasing it at a far greater pace. Every character in the scene powered towards a nearly nondescript house, in the distance a childlike outline of a home with a triangular roof, 4 windows, and a door. The faded colors and indistinguishable shapes on the cover hinted at the passage of time, as if secrets had been lost to the wear and tear of years gone by. But even as I held the box, an uneasy feeling crept into my mind. Was there something more to this game that the cover no longer revealed? What had been lost to time? Grandma proudly placed the game on the coffee table, her smile wide and eyes twinkling. I exchanged a knowing glance with Maya, who stifled a laugh behind her bubbling lips. We had never been fans of board games, so why did Grandma think we would enjoy this one? I felt a pang of guilt for the thought. Since starting university, and with Maya now in 6th form, the dynamics of our family had shifted. Mom and Dad had changed, and we soon discovered why. A few months ago, they finally revealed that Grandma was showing early signs of vascular dementia. While not entirely surprising, given the small signs we'd noticed over the years, it was still a blow. It made us realize that our time with her was precious and fleeting. We would do anything to make her remaining days pleasant, even if that meant enduring a marathon of antique shows or, as in this case, playing a peculiar and ancient board game. "What are the rules?" EMT Grandma asked, her voice filled with curiosity. I lifted the lid, wincing as it scraped loudly against the sides of the box. For a moment, it felt like the lid was resisting, as if it didn't want to reveal what lay beneath. But it eventually came free. Inside, a dusty heap of plastic figurines lay at the bottom, 3 white and 1 purple. "You need to hit the gem, spaghetti limbs," Maya joked, laughing. I playfully smacked her on the nose with the box cover, causing her to recoil in mock pain. "Behave, children," Grandma tutted, her voice gentle but firm. She suddenly paused, her eyes glazing over as if lost in thought. "Where did you get this game?" "It looks fun," she said, though there was a slight hesitation in her voice. "You bought it for us," Grandma, I replied, feeling a twinge of discomfort as the mood in the room shifted. "Oh," she responded softly, clearing her throat. "Yes, that's right. Sorry about that. Well, let's start, shall we? I just need to read the rules first." I chuckled, trying to lighten the atmosphere. "And you'll need to explain them to us, you dirty cheater," Maya teased, poking fun at my history of bending the rules during games. "I will," I promised, rolling my eyes, "and you'll spend 20 minutes reading the entire rule book just to make sure I didn't lie to you." "That sounds about right," Maya nodded, a playful smirk on her face. As I began reading the rules, I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The game's objective was simple enough: players needed to reach the house Peter's Place before the purple figure, representing Peter, did. However, Peter was relentless, moving 1 square closer to the house after every round. The players, depicted by the white pieces, could move 1 or 2 squares per turn, but every step was fraught with risk. Each square held a potential challenge, a choice that could either help or hinder your progress. I explained the rules to Grandma and Maya, feeling a growing sense of unease. This game, despite its seemingly innocent appearance, felt different, dangerous even. But why? Was it just my imagination, or was there something truly sinister lurking within this box? "Let's begin," Grandma said, her voice breaking through my thoughts. She seemed eager, almost too eager, to start playing. We set up the board on the carpet, revealing a complex network of paths leading to the house at the center. Some routes passed through dense woods, others through an abandoned town. My eyes wandered across the different paths, trying to discern which one would be the quickest. But something about the board unnerved me. The green squares seemed to outnumber the red ones, and a voice in the back of my mind whispered that green might not be the safer option. "Who goes first?" Maya asked, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "It doesn't say," I replied, glancing at the rule book. "Grandma, do you want to start?" "We'll go clockwise, you, Maya, then me, and finally Peter." "Sure," Grandma smiled, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "You'll have to move the piece for me, though. It'll hurt my back to keep getting up." "Of course," I said, lifting one of the white pieces. As I did, a sharp click echoed from the hallway, startling all 3 of us. We turned towards the back door, which had somehow unlatched itself and was now ajar. "Oh, don't worry about that," Grandma said, her voice dismissive. "That latch has been on the blink for ages." I stood up to close the door, but as I did, my eyes were drawn to the patterned glass. Beyond Grandma's cozy garden, the dim light of dusk cast eerie shadows over the field. I squinted, trying to make out something, a shape, perhaps lurking at the edge of the forest. My heart pounded as a sense of dread washed over me. What was that? Was something watching us? "EMT, are we playing or not?" Maya's voice called out from the living room, snapping me out of my thoughts. Shaking off the unsettling feeling, I closed the door and returned to the game. But the sense of unease lingered, and as the game progressed, it only grew stronger. With each turn, the atmosphere in the room seemed to darken. Was it just the game getting into my head, or was there something more to it? Something that none of us had anticipated. Grandma took her turn, choosing to move her piece into the dense woods. She landed on green square and drew an item card. "You earned yourself a chocolate bar," I read out loud, relieved that it was something so mundane. But when I handed the card to Grandma, her reaction was anything but ordinary. Her smile faded, and her eyes grew cold, sending a chill down my spine. Maya was up next. She moved 2 squares along a different path and landed on a red square. "A shovel," she announced, trying to sound cheerful. But as she read her choice card, her expression changed. "You find a bicycle propped against a nearby tree. Do you take it, moving forward an extra 2 squares, or leave it and stay where you are?" "Leave it," I suggested, feeling a sudden wave of anxiety. Why did that option feel so risky? Maya rolled her eyes. "You're no fun. I'll take the bicycle." She moved her piece forward, landing on an event space. As she picked up the event card, I held my breath, waiting for her to read it. "You become distracted by something in the forest," she began, her voice shaky. "You see a lamb, entirely out of place, being circled by wild foxes. The predators viciously tear the helpless creature limb from limb. You are so distracted that you miss your next turn, and Peter moves 2 steps forward." I sighed, the dread in my stomach intensifying. The game was becoming more unsettling with each passing moment, and the line between reality and fantasy began to blur. What was happening? Why did it feel like the game was more than just a game? It was finally my turn. I scanned the board, trying to choose the safest path, but there was no safe option. I followed Maya's lead, taking a different route and pushing my white figurine 2 squares forward, heading towards the abandoned town. As I moved closer to Peter's purple path, a shiver ran down my spine. Was I just imagining things, or was there something more to this game? Something that went beyond the plastic pieces and cardboard board? I landed on a red square, feeling a small sense of relief. Red felt safer, though I wasn't entirely sure why. I drew an item card and was greeted with an image of a torch. A perfectly ordinary item, I laughed, flashing the card at everyone. But as I reached for a choice card, the anxiety crept back in. What would the game throw at me next? "You find yourself in an empty town," I read aloud, frowning as I realized the card corresponded to the route I had taken. Excited to have reached somewhere, you run forward, moving an extra 2 squares. Your excitement fades as you realize that the town is empty, the streets deserted. Do you explore further, missing your next turn but gaining valuable items? Or do you leave immediately, moving back 1 space? I hesitated, unsure of which option to choose. The game had already proven to be far more sinister than we had anticipated. What lay ahead? What dangers were waiting to be uncovered? As the game continued, the sense of dread grew. Each turn brought us closer to the end, but what would we find there? Would we be able to finish the game, or was there something lurking in the shadows, waiting to claim us? The night wore on, and the boundary between the game and reality seemed to fade. What had started as a simple board game was turning into something far darker. What was Peter's place, really? And why did it feel like the game was more than just a game? As the game continued, a thick tension filled the room, intertwining with the dim light of the lamps that cast long shadows across the walls. The unsettling atmosphere weighed heavily on us all, but it was Grandma who seemed the most affected. Her once warm, radiant smile had all but faded, replaced by an expression of confusion and something else, something darker, something that tugged at the edges of my consciousness. "Right," Maya said, breaking the silence that had settled over us. She moved her piece 2 squares forward, towards the abandoned town where I had just ventured. The red square she landed on looked identical to the others, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something ominous lurked just beneath the surface. Maya picked up a red item card, then a choice card, her fingers trembling slightly as she read it aloud. "You find a bicycle propped against a nearby tree," she repeated, her voice quieter this time. "Do you take it, moving forward an extra 2 squares, or leave it and stay where you are?" The card was the same one she had drawn before, and I could see the doubt flicker in her eyes. "Leave it," I urged again, my voice firmer this time. "There's something wrong with this game, Maya. We need to be careful." But Maya shook her head, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm taking the bike," she said, trying to sound confident, though her voice wavered. She moved her piece forward, landing on another event square. As she picked up the event card, I saw her hands shake. "What does it say?" Grandma asked, her voice sounding distant, almost as if she were speaking from another room. Maya hesitated before reading the card aloud. "You become distracted by something in the forest," she began, her voice trembling. "You see a lamb, entirely out of place, being circled by wild foxes. The predators viciously tear the helpless creature limb from limb. You are so distracted that you miss your next turn, and Peter moves 2 steps forward." The same card again. My heart sank, and I could feel the dread creeping up on me like a cold hand wrapping around my throat. Was the game repeating itself? Was it playing tricks on us? But none of us responded. The room had grown even darker. The shadows now seemed to pulse with a life of their own, stretching and contracting as if they were breathing. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, and I struggled to shake the feeling that we were no longer alone. I took my turn next, moving my piece towards the town, just as Maya had done. My hand trembled as I reached for a red item card, hoping for something mundane, something that would ground me in reality. But the card I drew sent a chill down my spine. A broadsword, I read aloud, the words catching in my throat. An old, rusted broadsword. "What are you going to do with that?" Maya joked, though her laughter was forced. "Fight off some dragons?" I didn't respond. The image of the sword on the card was disturbingly vivid, almost as if I could feel the cold steel in my hands. A sense of foreboding washed over me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this card was more than just a prop in the game. Was it possible that the game was trying to tell me something? Was it preparing me for something terrible that lay ahead? As I drew my choice card, I braced myself for what was to come. "You pass by an old, abandoned school," I read, my voice barely above a whisper. "The windows are broken, and the playground is overgrown with weeds. Do you enter the building, hoping to find shelter, or do you continue on your way, knowing that the darkness within holds secrets best left undisturbed?" I hesitated, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. This was no longer a game of chance. Every choice we made seemed to carry real consequences, and the lines between the game and reality were blurring at an alarming rate. "Keep moving," Grandma said suddenly, her voice sharp and clear. "Don't go inside." Her words startled me, and I looked over at her. Her eyes were wide, filled with a clarity I hadn't seen in a long time. It was as if, for a brief moment, the fog of dementia had lifted, and she was fully present with us. "I agree," Maya said, her voice trembling. "Let's not take any unnecessary risks." I nodded and pushed my piece forward, choosing to stay outside the building. The sense of dread lifted slightly, but it was far from gone. There was something about the game that was playing on my fears, feeding off them. I could feel it growing stronger with every turn we took. Peter's piece moved next, sliding forward 2 squares, inching ever closer to the house. There was something unsettling about the way the purple figurine moved, so slow, yet so inevitable. It was as if Peter knew that no matter what we did, he would eventually catch up to us. The next few turns passed in a blur. Grandma, Maya, and I each took our turns, moving our pieces cautiously across the board. But no matter how carefully we played, Peter continued to close the gap. With each step he took, the tension in the room grew thicker, almost unbearable. What would happen when he reached the house? What were we really playing for? It was Grandma's turn again. She was only a few squares away from the house, and with a pair of running shoes that she had picked up earlier in the game, she was able to move 3 squares per turn. But as she reached for the next card, something in the air shifted, a cold, heavy presence that pressed down on all of us. "You face the ones you fear," Grandma read aloud, her voice trembling. "The ones you thought you would avoid at the week's end, at the island's end, and you realize that time is up. You flee no more. You fight." A silence fell over the room, thick and suffocating. We all knew that the card was speaking to us directly, that it was addressing the fears we had tried to suppress since we began playing. What would Grandma choose? Would she fight, or would she flee? And what did that choice mean for us, for her? Grandma hesitated, her hands shaking as she held the card. "I don't want to keep playing." My heart ached as I looked at her. The game had taken its toll, and I could see the fear and confusion in her eyes. She had been through so much already. Did we really need to continue? But something inside me, some primal, survival instinct, urged me to keep going. "We have to finish the game," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. "We can't stop now." Maya looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "EMT, this isn't just a game anymore. I feel like something is watching us, something waiting for us to make a mistake." I swallowed hard, trying to push down the fear that threatened to overwhelm me. "I know," I whispered, my voice trembling. "But we have to finish it. We have to see this through." Grandma nodded slowly, her resolve hardening. "I choose to fight," she said, her voice stronger now. She moved her piece forward, back towards the house, but the fear in her eyes told me that she was as scared as the rest of us. The game was nearing its climax, and we were running out of time. Peter was only a few squares away from the house, and it was becoming increasingly clear that this was no ordinary board game. It was something far darker, something that had a life of its own. What would happen when Peter reached the house? And what would it mean for us if we couldn't stop him? With trembling hands, Maya took her turn. She pushed her piece forward, landing on a green square near the house. "A muddy rat," she read aloud, her voice shaking. "You find a muddy rat." The card seemed almost mocking, as if the game was toying with us, playing on our fears and doubts. But Maya didn't let it stop her. She drew her choice card, her face pale as she read it. "You face the ones you fear," she whispered, Do you wield a weapon, moving backwards one space, or do you take the pain, moving forwards one space? The room was so quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. What would Maya choose? Would she fight, or would she flee? And what would the consequences be for all of us? Maya's face twisted in pain as she made her decision. "I'll wield the weapon," she said, her voice barely audible. She moved her piece backwards, away from the house, as if trying to distance herself from the terror that awaited her. I drew in a shaky breath as I realized it was my turn. My hands shook as I reached for the cards, knowing that the choices I made could seal our fate. The game had taken on a life of its own, and it was no longer just about winning or losing. It was about survival. I pushed my piece forward, landing on a red square. The card I drew was a horse, an item that promised to protect us, to give us speed as we raced towards the finish line. But there was a catch. If we used the horse, Peter would move twice as fast. Was it worth the risk? My heart pounded as I made my choice. "I choose to ride the horse," I said, my voice trembling. "We'll all move faster, but so will Peter." Maya and Grandma exchanged worried glances, but they nodded in agreement. We had no choice. We had to finish the game, no matter the cost. The final round began. Peter was only a few squares away from the house, and we were running out of time. What would happen when he reached the house? Would we be able to stop him, or was it already too late? The final round had begun, and the tension in the room was palpable. Maya, Grandma, and I exchanged nervous glances as we prepared for what felt like the inevitable. Peter was only a few squares away from the house, his relentless pace never wavering, never slowing. And now, with the horse in play, we would move faster, but so would he. The stakes had never been higher. Maya went first, her hands trembling as she pushed her piece forward. She landed on a green square, drawing an item card with the word shield emblazoned across it. The card promised protection, but from what? As she reached for her choice card, I could see the fear in her eyes. "You find yourself at a crossroads," she read aloud, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Do you take the path that leads directly to the house, risking Peter catching up, or do you take the longer, safer route?" Maya hesitated, looking at me and then at Grandma. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I just want this to be over." I felt a pang of guilt. I had pushed her into this, insisted that we finish the game despite the growing sense of dread that had taken hold of all of us. But now, there was no turning back. We had to see it through. "Take the direct route," I urged, my voice steadier than I felt. "We need to reach the house before Peter does." Maya nodded, though her expression remained strained. She moved her piece forward, closer to the house and closer to whatever fate awaited us. Next, it was Grandma's turn. She was only 3 squares away from the house, and with the running shoes she had acquired earlier, she could move all the way to the finish line. But as she reached for the final card, the room seemed to grow colder, the air heavy with anticipation. "You face your greatest fear," Grandma read aloud, her voice trembling. "Do you confront it head-on, risking everything, or do you flee, knowing that doing so may cost you everything you hold dear?" The silence that followed was deafening. Grandma looked at us, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't want to keep playing," she said again, her voice barely audible. My heart broke for her. She had already endured so much. Why did she have to suffer through this as well? But the game had its hooks in us, and I knew we had no choice but to finish it. "You can do this," Grandma Maya said softly, her voice filled with a tenderness that brought tears to my eyes. "You're almost there." With a shaky breath, Grandma nodded. "I'll confront it," she whispered, moving her piece forward to the house. She had made it. She had reached Peter's place. But what did that mean for us? What did it mean for her? "Grandma?" I called out, panic rising in my chest. But there was no response, only the sound of my own breathing, ragged and uneven. A moment later, the lights flickered back on, and I found myself standing in the same spot, but the room felt different, darker, more oppressive. The board game was still there, the pieces in place, but something had changed. Peter's piece had moved. He was now only 1 square away from the house. "We have to finish this," I whispered to myself, more to keep calm than anything else. My hands shook as I reached for the next card. "It's my turn." I pushed my piece forward, landing on a red square. The item card I drew was a rope, an ominous sign, considering the choices that lay ahead. With a deep breath, I picked up the choice card. "You reach the final stretch," I read aloud, my voice trembling. "But the path is blocked by an insurmountable obstacle. Do you use the rope to climb over it, risking the time it takes, or do you try to find another way around, knowing that Peter is right behind you?" The weight of the decision pressed down on me, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. This was at the moment that would decide everything. I glanced at Maya, who was watching me with wide, fearful eyes, and then at Grandma, who had gone pale, her hands trembling in her lap. "I'll use the rope," I decided, my voice barely more than a whisper. I moved my piece forward, closer to the house, but the fear in my heart only grew. Peter's turn was next. Maya and I watched in horror as his piece moved forward, finally reaching the house. The room seemed to darken even more, the shadows closing in around us, suffocating us. "What's happening?" Maya cried, her voice filled with terror. "Why isn't it over?" We all reached the house. I didn't have an answer. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening, but the fear was overwhelming, paralyzing. Was this the end? Was Peter's place truly his now? And then, as if in response to our unspoken fears, the room plunged into darkness once more. But this time, the darkness was different, thicker, more oppressive. I felt a cold, heavy presence in the room, something that watched us, something that waited. "Grandma?" "Maya," I called out again, my voice trembling. But there was no response, only the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming closer. I turned towards the source of the sound, my heart pounding in my chest, and then, out of the darkness, he appeared, Peter, or what was left of him. His form was barely human, a twisted silhouette shrouded in shadows, with eyes that glowed a sickly yellow. He moved with a slow, measured pace, his gaze fixed on us. "Run," I screamed, grabbing Maya's hand and pulling her towards the door. But the door was gone, replaced by a wall of solid darkness. There was no escape. Peter took another step forward, and the cold in the room grew more intense, cutting through me like a knife. My breath hitched as he raised a hand, pointing towards the board game on the table. "It's not over," he said, his voice a low, raspy whisper that sent chills down my spine. "You have one more choice to make." I looked at the board, at the cards and pieces scattered across it. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized what he meant. There was one final event card to draw, the card that would determine our fate. With trembling hands, I reached for the card, my fingers brushing against its surface. The room seemed to hold its breath as I flipped it over, revealing the words that would seal our fate. "You have reached the end," I read aloud, my voice shaking. "But your journey is not over. To claim victory, you must give up what you hold most dear. Do you accept, knowing that this will be the end of Peter's place, or do you refuse, knowing that the game will never end?" The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. What did I hold most dear? My family? My sanity? My very life? What was I willing to sacrifice to end this nightmare? Peter's gaze bore into me, his twisted form looming closer. There was no escape, no way out. I had to make a choice, and I had to make it now. I hesitated, the weight of the decision crushing me. I accept. As soon as the words left my mouth, the room seemed to explode with light, blinding and searing. I felt a rush of cold air, a sensation of being pulled away, and then nothing. When I opened my eyes, I was back in Grandma's living room. The board game was gone. The pieces and cards vanished without a trace. Maya and Grandma were beside me, both looking as confused and disoriented as I felt. "Is it over?" Maya asked, her voice small and trembling. I nodded slowly, though I wasn't sure myself. "I think so." But as I looked around the room, at the familiar furniture and warm light, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, something important, and then it hit me. Grandma. She was there, but she wasn't. Her eyes were vacant, her face expressionless. She was alive, but the person she had been was gone. The realization tore through me like a knife. I had given up what I held most dear to end the game, and in doing so, I had lost Grandma, lost her to the darkness that had taken hold of her mind. Tears filled my eyes as I looked at Maya, who was staring at Grandma with the same heartbreaking realization. "She's gone," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I lost her." Maya wrapped her arms around me, and we held each other as the weight of what we had done settled over us. The game was over, but the cost had been too high. As we sat there in the quiet, empty house, I couldn't help but wonder, had we really won? Or had Peter claimed his place after all? Even now, as I write this, I can feel his presence, lurking in the shadows, waiting. The game may be over, but the darkness remains, and one day I know Peter will return to claim what is his. One day, Peter will have his place. The chilling tale of Peter's place reminds us that sometimes the scariest stories aren't the ones we see on screen, but those that unfold in the quiet moments of our lives, where the lines between reality and nightmare blur. If this story left you questioning what really lurks in the shadows, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more spine-tingling content. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in their shoes? Drop a comment below and let us know how you would have faced the terror of Peter's place. Your feedback helps us keep the stories coming.